The word autophagy has almost become synonymous with fasting, but in today's video, we're going to talk more about how exercise is a powerful influencer or enhancer of this critically important cellular process known as autophagy. Now, I think this is very important, and there was a new book that was put out. I think it's 120 pages, the title here, and we're going to break down like some of the key salient take-home messages from the various chapters here. The title is Exercise, Autophagy, and Chronic Diseases. Now, this to me, and I've been studying this fascinating topic of autophagy as it relates to intermittent fasting, short duration, time-restricted feeding, and also exercise for a number of years. And this book did a great job of putting everything in context and summarizing the applicable sort of practical ways to enhance this critically important cellular process by way of exercise, and how autophagy is very important and involved in muscle health and helping muscle mass. So when we think about autophagy, I just want to make, kind of the thesis of this video, and we're going to break down a lot of practical tips that I think were important. But when we think of autophagy, we think of fasting and exercise both influencing this critically important process. So when you want to customize your intermittent fasting or your prolonged fasting or your time-restricted feeding protocol, it also depends upon how much or how little exercise you do. So if you're not exercising at all, you may need to crank up the fasting duration, the fasting intensity. But if you're exercising a lot, perhaps the importance on fasting may not be so important, right? Because, you kind of have a little bit more balance here. And I just want you to understand that there's two different ways to achieve this very important process that is linked with longevity. So we're going to get into it. But first, if you've never heard of autophagy, what the heck is it and why is it so sought after? So here's a definition from this book. Autophagy is the self-degradative process that targets cell constituents like mitochondria, organelles, and so forth that are damaged or aged. For example, aged mitochondria or misfolded proteins. So again, one of the hallmarks of aging is misfolded protein accumulation, and that causes cells to then misbehave and can trigger apoptosis and lead to dis-ease, dysfunction within the organ systems. Let me go back here. So the process targets cell constituents to lysosomes for degradation and or digestion. Under basal conditions, autophagy occurs at low levels in most tissues, contributing to the routine turnover of cellular trash and the maintenance of cellular homeostasis. However, the dysfunctional autophagy, such as autophagy inhibition or overactivation, leads to many acute and chronic diseases such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, including Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and Huntington's disease, cardiovascular disease, and much more. So that's the definition. So essentially, if you don't provide periodic states of nutrient deprivation that can be achieved by both exercise and fasting and or calorie restriction, you're going to accumulate cellular trash. And that cellular trash can cause your cells to then misbehave, to misfire. Just like it's hard to focus in your house when you have crap and stuff everywhere. When you have garbage and trash, if you don't take out your compost, guess what? It's hard to focus. It's hard to really perform. You don't want to have a bunch of people over your house when you have misfolded proteins, right? Or trash everywhere. So it's important, friends, to exercise, to walk, to periodically go into a calorie deficit. So that's the process. Here's a great image here showing the sort of stimulators and inhibitors here with mTOR and NPK, starvation versus nutrients. So again, this is all background perspective. You know about this. What a lot of people don't know is the links between acute and chronic exercise as enhancers of this critically important cellular process, again, of autophagy. So let's sort of define what is acute exercise and what is chronic exercise when you hear about it, for example, in this context. Acute exercise is Sally Smith goes to the gym and lift weights for 45 minutes. Chronic exercise is Sally has been regularly lifting weights 4 to 5 days a week for the past 6 months, okay? So there are different adaptations in the post-exercise window in the acute exercise context, and there's long-term favorable adaptations when we've been habitually exercising. So I just want you to understand, chronic exercise doesn't mean that you run a marathon every day, right? So just so we understand that. So this chapter is chapter 2. Again, phenomenal book. Definitely check it out. Appropriate exercise can regulate autophagic activity through multiple signal transduction pathways. And the autophagy activity changes under different conditions, exercise modalities, and so forth. Moderate exercise training can promote cellular autophagy, whereas excessive exercise may lead to the disruption of cellular autophagy and even cause programmed cellular lesions or cell death in severe cases. So we know that overtraining, if we just think anecdotally, if you've met someone that has been overtraining for a long period of time, they've been doing marathon and Ironman and triathlon, they might appear to be very physically fit. They're lean, but sometimes they look like their aging process has been accelerated. So we've talked about balance and having this U-shaped curve. Exercise in the context of autophagy seems to have this U-shaped curve where, too little is bad and too much is bad, and being in the sweet spot. Okay. So chronically overtraining can actually cause too much autophagy and over-accelerated autophagy. Okay. We now know that skeletal muscle mass accounts for about 40% of our body weight, and various existing studies have shown that moderate autophagy plays a vital role in the maintenance of skeletal muscle mass and function. So again, the bodybuilding community, if you think about this, okay, they are getting autophagy by way of their exercise, but they're eating every 2 to 3 hours. And so imagine if you could, instead of maybe eating every 2 to 3 hours, you have your feeding window and then you completely stop, which can then, as we've discussed over many different videos and podcasts over the last year and a half, time restricted feeding, just having a feeding window, for example, 8 in the morning to say 2 p.m., or it can be 10 to 6, but eating earlier in the day and cutting off and starting your fast in the evening, as opposed to just skipping breakfast as a way to intermittent fast. So just consider that. Okay. So the activation of intramuscular cellular autophagy to promote mitochondrial productivity and improve mitochondrial function is necessary to improve locomotor performance. So in order to optimize your muscle's ability to move and contract, you need to undergo this process of autophagy. It's part of the adaptation process. So when you go to exercise, whether you do sprints, whether you do high intensity interval training, we talked about like on the Caro bike that uses AI technology to help you to optimize the power output, whether you do resistance training or hiking, whatever it is, you're causing adaptations. You're causing your body, you're tearing down your muscles, and you're putting a hormetic stress on your cardiovascular system, and your body responds to that adaptation so it can be better prepared for the next event. Well, it turns out that part of those adaptations are mediated by this critically important intracellular process of autophagy. And also the energy associated with metabolic homeostasis of skeletal muscle is directly related to the elevated expression of PGC1 alpha, which improves motility, adaptation, and also initiates partly the autophagy process in skeletal muscle. Now, it turns out that skeletal muscle is really important, but the myocardium, the muscle of the heart, is highly influenced by this very important process of autophagy. So the cardiomyocyte refers to the muscle cell that specifically comprises the heart. So the cardiomyocyte is a highly differentiated end cell, and autophagy can degrade misfolded proteins and senescent cells or malfunctioning organelles to supply energy to cardiomyocytes. So we know that heart disease is one of the leading causes of death in developed countries. Many people have shortened lifespans, especially men. In their 30s and 40s, they get a fatal myocardial infarction, heart attack, and die. Well, it turns out that misfolded proteins, mitochondrial dysfunction within the heart can actually lead to challenges within the functioning of the heart. So promoting intracellular material circulation and cellular renewal can maintain cardiac function. So it's important if you're concerned about heart health, especially now that we know that the SARS-CoV-2 virus is endemic. We know that individuals with cardiovascular risk factors are at higher risk for complications, long haul, and all that. We should be focusing on exercise as a modality to improve heart health and the functioning and the mitochondrial activity within the heart. And so we're going to get into some of those details. But this image does a really good job of highlighting the main kind of 4 targets that autophagy can target in the body. And that's the health of the heart, health of the brain, health of the muscle, and also the liver as well. So it turns out that your liver has a lot of mitochondria, and those mitochondria are very metabolically active in helping to oxidize fat for fuel and so forth. So exercise hits all of these different organ systems that are highly amenable and get benefits by upregulating autophagy. So really exciting stuff. Now, before we get into more details about the liver, fatty liver disease, which unfortunately is very, very common, and the brain as it relates to exercise and autophagy, I just want to say hello and welcome you all back. It's Mike Mutzel. Grateful that you're tuning in here. Look, if you're enjoying this content, one thing that you can do that really helps is hit that like button. You can take this URL and text this to like 2 or 3 friends that you know so that they get activated, and they get updated and they can get some of the science that we're talking about here, such as autophagy. We have another video that we're going to film a little bit later here all about mTOR inhibition and and all these different metformin and things like that your friends might enjoy. So that really helps. Leave us a comment. And also, if you're into exercise, and I think you should be exercising, one thing that you may want to consider is supplementing with electrolytes and carnonutrients like taurine and creatine. So what we've done here over at our sister company, Myoscience, is blend together an electrolyte combination that also features taurine and creatine using the salt in the electrolyte part, this combination formula from Redmond Real Salt. So it's a very unique ingredient combination that's never been done before. Similar raw materials have been studied clinically and have been shown to improve and support healthy hydration and exercise performance, but this is the first commercially available version called Electrolyte Sticks, brought to you by Myoscience. So as a promotion going on now through the end of October, when you buy one bottle, you get the second bottle 100%. It's actually a box, 100% discounted. So if you go to the website, myoscience.com, that's myoscience.com, check out the electrolyte sticks, put 2 in the shopping cart. The second one is 100% discounted now through the end of the month. This is a phenomenal, easy to drink. You can put it in your gym bag. You can put it in your car. You can travel after you go in the sauna, after you do exercise. You can really help to improve and support your body's healthy hydration response and athletic performance. So definitely take advantage of that offer because you're going to dig this product. So let's get back to talk about some of the nuts and bolts with regards to exercise and the importance of glycogen depletion. And this may be why fasted exercise in the morning can be beneficial if you're striving to optimize or increase levels of autophagy. And friends, I have clients do this all the time. If clients are like, look, I've never exercised before, what's the best time of the day for exercise? Well, I often recommend for people is to have a little bit of tea or a little coffee. A little caffeine can help spirulina muscle mass and enhance the sort of lipolysis of fat, and go out and go for a walk first thing in the morning, or ride your bike, do some exercise, do some cardio. So moderate exercise increases cardiomyocyte autophagy levels and degrades intracellular metabolic waste, thus maintaining the heart cells itself. So in addition, it has been shown to improve injured cardiac functioning cells by altering the levels of autophagy in the heart itself. So look, if you have occluded coronary arteries or some sort of narrowing or what's known as stenosis in the cardiovascular system, guess what? You can have cellular dysfunction. And so autophagy can help repair some of that, which I think is really fascinating. So a period of exercise can significantly increase autophagosomes and the membrane bilayer of senescent cardiomyocytes. So these are cells that have accelerated aging, and this might be due to stress or challenges. And so these levels of increased autophagy can sort of degrade some of these intracellular proteins that are compromising ejection fraction and heart health, which really important stuff here. Is aging cardiomyocytes are often prone to reduced autophagy levels. Available evidence suggests that long-term aerobic exercise can improve cardiac function by increasing autophagy levels in aging cardiomyocytes, thereby resisting myocardial aging. So really important. If you think about without your heart, I mean, without any organ, it's tough, right? Without your liver, you can make the argument. You need your brain. But look, your heart is really responsible for, helping to pump oxygenated rich blood throughout the body to your brain and so forth. And if your heart is not functioning, then that can worsen various diseases. And we want to preserve these cardiomyocytes, and autophagy enhancement by way of intermittent fasting and also exercise may be a great tool. So under normal conditions, exercise can induce the activation of autophagy in cells from various tissues and organs, but especially within the cardiomyocytes. Like this is emphasized over and over again in this book, which I think is really fascinating. Now, it's not just the heart, it's not just the muscle, it's your liver as well. So we're going to talk about the hepatocytes, which are the cells that comprise your liver. So really important that the liver is highly sort of inducible and affected and improved by levels of autophagy. Now, this is really important because you can measure the level of fat buildup in your liver using your liver function test, your ALT, your AST, and your GGT. So these are categorized under this umbrella of liver function tests. Most doctors should be running this, but sometimes they forget to. Honestly, they might run one or two. They might run AST and GGT or whatever. You want all three, and this is important to check because this can be a signal of metabolic smoke, meaning that you're accumulating fat in your organs, this so-called ectopic lipid deposition in your pancreas, in your heart, and in your liver. You do not want fat to accumulate there. That is a sign of dysregulated autophagy. So when people are looking for biomarkers, you can't really directly measure this if you don't have a molecular and cellular biological laboratory that can do, biopsies and things like that. But you can look at liver enzymes. So important to run this. Definitely check out the blood work cheat sheet that I will link below because I want to make sure you get good labs. I have clients all the time who just went to their doctor and their labs are incomplete. And it's like, we can't really make many inferences from incomplete labs. Okay, so let's talk about the importance of exercise in a fasted state and glycogen depletion, and how much VO2 max do you need and all this. Well, it turns out that exercise intensity at 50% of VO2 max for 60 minutes, preceded by 36 hours of fasting, was linked with a significant increase in autophagy. So that's really important. Autophagy is able to promote the catabolism of intracellular glycogen and lipids and so forth, while also removing damaged proteins during exercise. So this is important. So I'm not saying that you should train in a low state all the time, but periodically train in a low state. Periodically, I like to do this like on the weekends, with the family. If we're going to go for a hike, it's not going to be something totally vigorous and we're crushing it. Sometimes we do crush it, but not all the time. That will be after just coffee and totally fasted, so that you're depleting through that glycogen. You're helping to break down these misfolded proteins, and you really can get a nice flux in this autophagy level. So exercise can activate autophagy in the absence of muscle glycogen, which may be due to the body's protection of skeletal muscle to prevent excess degradation of skeletal muscle through apoptosis. So important stuff here. Now, there's glycogen level in your muscle before exercise is correlated with the flux in autophagy. So this is really important. So the level of glycogen in muscle before exercise is negatively correlated with the activation status of autophagy. Okay, so if we think about, there's sort of this inverse relationship here. So if you have a lot of muscle glycogen, there's really no need to activate this process of autophagy. So essentially what that means is that if you go exercise after having a big meal, okay, well, don't expect to have massive shifts in the flux of autophagy because you probably have full liver and muscle glycogen. However, if you exercise in the morning and you haven't yet had a meal, well, guess what? Your body is going to rip through that glycogen because you've been fasting all night, right? Let's say you had dinner at 6 p.m. and you're exercising at 7 in the morning. So you've been fasting for a while. So you're going to rip through that glycogen, and then your body needs to depend upon the process of autophagy to start breaking down intracellular lipids within the muscle. So you're going to have a better flux of autophagy. So if you're striving for longevity and you're just exercising for health, that might be the best time to exercise. Okay, so in human experiments, significant decreases in these initiation proteins are observed immediately after cycling in a fasted state. So these autophagy initiation proteins are quickly changed when you are exercising in a fasted state. So that's important. So the number of autophagosomes in the soleus muscle, which is in the calf muscle, and the gastrocnemius muscles in mice, reveals an increase after fasting for 24 hours. So this is what various studies have also shown, and they're increased just after 12 minutes of exercise. So really interesting stuff. There's a lot of great details here. We're going to continue on here. A number of studies have reported that appropriate long-term chronic exercise interventions, intracellular autophagy is activated and the cellular levels of autophagy is upregulated, thus accelerating the degradation of metabolites in cells and maintaining the stable structure and function of cells. Moderate exercise can stimulate increased levels of cellular autophagy, thereby preventing or alleviating the development of various chronic diseases. So exercise can effectively induce autophagy, and both acute exercise and long-term aerobic endurance exercise can increase the expression of autophagy-related proteins in normal cells. Really important stuff. Long-term endurance exercise is also found to increase cellular levels and improve the adaptation of the body to exercise training by upregulating these initiation proteins LC3 and Beclin-1. So really important stuff here. I think we just have a couple more slides to go over. So chronic exercise can stimulate the compensatory activation of signaling pathways, thereby increasing the level of autophagy, removing damaged organelles and misfolded proteins. So again, fascinating stuff here. Now, unlike acute exercise, chronic exercise induces autophagy and has been shown to increase its basal levels. So this is why it's important to exercise on a regular basis. So you take that baseline level and you just bump it up a little bit so that you are supporting your body's longevity process. Okay. Now, this is where I think it gets really important in terms of the nuts and bolts. And again, we can't really totally measure our mitochondria, but one of the ways that exercise improves health is by affecting mitochondrial biogenesis and mitochondrial function. Well, part of that is by getting rid of mitochondria that may be sort of dead weight, that may be not functioning optimally. So In terms of the exercise training on mitochondrial quality, especially in the heart muscle, the cardiomyocytes, chronic exercise can significantly enhance the orderly arrangement of cardiac myofibers and cardiac myocytes, and can also contribute to the stabilization of the internal environment of cardiomyocytes and the quality control of mitochondria through mitochondrial autophagy, also known as mitophagy. So these results indicate that chronic exercise training can improve cardiomyocyte autophagy and mitochondrial plasticity and promote the renewal of mitochondria and mitochondrial quality in cardiomyocytes. So really important, because as you age, the level of quality mitochondria within the heart cells can decline. And that can trigger these intracellular apoptotic pathways and lead to cardiomyocyte dysfunction and potentially maybe poor ejection fraction and heart health. Okay, lots more data here on the quality control and the autophagosome. But the important thing that we need to keep in mind here is moderate intensity long-term exercise training can effectively improve the quality and quantity of myocardial mitochondria. That's a big one. And reduce the number of aging or damaged mitochondria and meet the requirements of cardiac output during exercise. So if you think about it, people who are unfit, people who get really winded quickly, they walk up the stairs, their face is red, they're like sweating, their heart's going crazy. Well, if you really think about, mechanistically, what could that be? Well, if they have a lot of, say, senescent cardiomyocytes, so if their cells within the heart are aged and dysfunctional, and they go to then stress test them by exerting themselves, they're not able to function in a sort of coherent, synergistic manner to move blood and oxygen around. So therefore, they're going to be more stressed under those certain situations. So exercise and part of the adaptations with training is making sure that there's enough and high quality mitochondria, and the cells there are not having an accumulation of misfolded proteins. And so they're all firing and working in an orchestrated manner to improve muscle oxygenation and heart supply and blood flow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about weight loss and diabetes and the links here with exercise and autophagy enhancement. So this is chapter 3, the beneficial roles of exercise-mediated autophagy in type 2 diabetes. So exercise really helps to maintain mitochondrial health, as we've been talking about, with the heart. But this is also very important in the muscle as well, because we know that in the muscle, that's really where type 2 diabetes can often start. So moderate exercise can mitigate insulin resistance by improving mitochondrial functions. We've known that, but part of the ways that exercise improves mitochondrial function is autophagy mediated. That part is new, okay? So by reversing mitochondrial structural damage and by improving mitochondrial dynamics and mitophagy, which is a subtype of autophagy that specifically renews the mitochondria, this suggests that exercise may play a therapeutic role in protecting against mitochondrial impairments and insulin resistance. Phenomenal stuff. So again, the idea that exercise is supportive for your mitochondria, we've known that for 20 years, 25 years. But how it's doing it is sort of a novel concept, that this is being improved by this important process of autophagy. Okay, so I think this is important for anyone who wants to maintain muscle mass as they get older. So skeletal muscle is controlled by a dynamic balance between protein synthesis and protein degradation. So there's this flux, there's this turnover. Autophagy is part of that process, friends. So even if you're a weightlifter, even if you want to have reasonably large muscles, you want to have strength, you want to be strong, you should still care about inducing this process of autophagy. So protein anabolism in skeletal muscle requires the activation of insulin signaling cascades such as insulin and mTOR signaling pathway. Conversely, protein degradation in skeletal muscle mainly requires the mechanisms of this proteasome pathway and autophagy lysosomal protein degradation. As we all know, hyperglycemia, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes can decrease skeletal muscle mass and induce skeletal muscle atrophy and dysfunction. I want to just pause here. This is often not known, that insulin-resistant individuals essentially have a cellular defect of insulin signaling. We know that insulin promotes growth. So we think insulin resistance, diabetes. We don't think about insulin resistance and atrophy of skeletal muscle. We don't often think about that, but that was one of the first indications of diabetes. It's been long known that insulin resistance accelerates muscle loss and muscle wasting. So this is really why, I know a lot of people that are into fitness and bodybuilding say, oh, low carb, fasting, that's all garbage. You got to count calories. But look, these strategies are effective at improving insulin sensitivity, which is important for preserving muscle mass as we age. So this is a very important concept. And again, part of the way that we can improve insulin sensitivity and mitochondrial health and muscle is by supporting autophagy. And so we've already talked about fasting, but exercise is a great tool there. I know I'm being repetitive. I just want to solidify this so we can sort of marry these concepts. So although it has been already demonstrated that the adverse effects of exercise and diabetes and so forth can be alleviated by exercise-mediated autophagy, the underlying mechanisms as to how these work remain largely unknown. Autophagy is required to maintain skeletal muscle mass and protect against muscle atrophy. Energy surpluses such as a high-fat diet or a high-sugar diet can lead to dysfunctional muscle and decreased grip strength. So again, if you're overdoing the food, the holidays are coming up, you're going to be crushing, pies and cakes and sweets and this and that. Well, guess what? You can become weaker as a result of that by dysregulating this dynamic balance between protein synthesis and protein degradation. So you need, a little bit of balance here. So I think this is really important stuff. Now, let's get into fat loss. A lot of people, obviously, 72% or more of adults, at least in the US, are overweight or obese. They have too much body fat. So how is this process of autophagy linked with body fat? Well, it turns out that the process of liberating stored fat from your fat cells is known as lipophagy. So it's mediated by autophagy. So autophagy is involved in the fat loss process. Very important. So there's a close connection between autophagy and the process of obesity. And the role of autophagy in the initiation and development of obesity has been long known. Calorie restriction can improve lifespan, which may be partly attributed to autophagy activation, especially lipophagy that I just mentioned, and mitophagy. Can lead to reduction in oxidative stress and can prevent overaccumulation of lipids within the cells, thus preventing and delaying the development of obesity-related complications. I think that's worth just saying again. It sounds really cool. So the process of enhancing lipophagy and mitophagy. So lipophagy, the specific subtype of autophagy that's necessary to split up and chop up fat within cells, within your adipocytes, and also your muscle tissue, right? So we know that autophagy is very nuanced. There's xenophagy, there's all these different subtypes. That subtype of autophagy that literally chops up stored fat is known as lipophagy. Important. So when you exercise in a fasted state, you can enhance this process, and that can obviously then prevent or delay the development of obesity-related complications. Okay, so physical activity combined with calorie restriction is an important non-pharmacological intervention strategy for body weight loss, and both interventions can activate autophagy to improve metabolic flexibility and insulin sensitivity. So again, this is important. When people just focus on reducing calories but forget about exercise, you're just hitting one. This is a multimodal tool is where I'm trying to go with here. So again, when people get stuck and like, oh my gosh, I tried the keto thing and it didn't work. I didn't lose weight. I tried cutting calories and dieting and I didn't lose the weight. Well, did you also exercise? Are you walking every day? So we need to hit this from multiple approaches, because let's face it, when we start to gain weight, it's often because we stopped exercising, we stopped walking, and we overate, right? We did multiple things. It's multifactorial. So we need to apply a pleiotropic or multimodal approach to unwind all the damage that we've created. Okay, so really important stuff here, but the functional status of autophagy is dysregulated in obese individuals, and the underlying mechanisms involved in autophagy and the initiation of insulin resistance is well known. And so we got to focus on this, because the formation of these lipid droplets, which is where lipids are stored within the body, we can reverse that by enhancing autophagy. So really important stuff here that is highlighted. I can't recommend this paper enough. Again, the title of this book is Exercise, Autophagy, and Chronic Diseases. So really important stuff here. The take-home message here, autophagy is very important, especially for the heart, brain, liver, and muscle. We know that. And we know that exercising in a sort of low state, low energy state, may initiate or further give us a little bit of a boost when we're exercising and fasted. So I suggest finding a time of the day that habitually works for you when it comes to exercise. If that's the afternoon, then stick to it. A lot of people, though, especially if you have family, you have kids, it's first thing in the morning. So make it an effort to be consistent. Remember, chronic exercise, habitual exercise is what what takes that baseline level and bumps it up when it comes to autophagy. So we want to be thinking about that. So hopefully you found this helpful. Again, I know we covered a lot here. I will link this book so you can check it out and some of these articles. But when you think about autophagy, I want you to think about, yeah, fasting is important. Calorie restriction could be part of it, but exercise is another powerful influencer of this critically important process that can help you age more gracefully. Okay. As always, friends, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hitting that like button. Thank you for subscribing. And if you enjoyed this content, please share it with a friend that you think might enjoy it as well. We will catch you on a future podcast down the road. Take care.